Hey everyone, welcome to your personalized deep dive
Wow.
into the world of work from home trends
Yeah.
and its impact on burnout.
Yeah.
We're wrapping up 2024 and things have changed so much. You're in the right place to catch up.
There's a whole new world to
Yeah,
work.
to guide us, we're using the Survey of Working Arrangements and Attitudes, SWAA for short,
Mm-hmm.
which has been tracking work trends since May 2020 with over 200,000 U.S. respondents.
Wow.
And we've got the November 2024 data,
Oh, wow.
hot off the press.
So fresh.
So let's get into it.
Yeah.
First off, WFH
Right.
is not a fad.
It's here to stay.
It's here to stay, but it's evolving in some really interesting ways.
It is evolving.
Get this. The amount of WFH growth we've seen in just the past few years is like
It's crazy.
almost 40 years
Yeah.
of pre-pandemic growth, like hitting fast forward
Yeah.
on workplace evolution.
The pandemic just totally reshaped how we think about work.
And where we work?
Yeah. Like,
In September 2024, over a quarter of all paid workdays in the U.S., 28%,
28%.
were from home. And looking ahead, employers are projecting an average of 2.3 WFH days per week for eligible employees.
Oh, wow.
So this isn't going away.
Nope.
This is becoming part of our work culture.
It's interesting, though, the tension between what employers are planning and what employees want.
Yeah. There's this gap, like 0.6 days
Mhm.
every week between how much WFH employees want and what employers are offering.
Yeah, that's a big gap.
It makes you wonder, are employers keeping up with what their employees actually want?
It's definitely something to think about.
Especially when you're thinking about attracting and retaining top talent.
For sure.
Okay, so different ways of working.
Right.
Let's break it down. As of mid-2024, about 12% were fully remote.
Okay.
61% fully on-site, and 27% doing hybrid.
All right.
But here's the interesting part. For those who can WFH,
Yep.
the most common setup was actually hybrid, followed closely by fully on-site,
So not everyone's ditching the office?
right?
That's interesting.
It's like we're all trying to figure out what works
Yeah.
in this new world. And another interesting thing, older workers, like in their 50s and 60s,
Right.
are more likely to be fully on-site or fully remote compared to their younger colleagues. Why is that?
Good question.
So let's look at some specific sectors.
Okay.
No surprise, finance, tech, and professional and business services are leading the WFH charge.
Makes sense.
But here's the takeaway.
Right.
It's not just a tech thing anymore.
Right.
WFH is spreading across all sorts of industries.
It's becoming mainstream.
It's the norm. Now let's talk about burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a headline that might surprise you. Fully remote workers are reporting the fewest burnout symptoms.
That's interesting. You wouldn't think that.
The most common burnout symptom, that low energy exhaustion,
Yep. Yeah.
fully remote workers are the least likely to experience it.
Oh, wow.
Compared to other work models. They're also less likely to have negative feelings about their jobs.
So there are upsides.
There are upsides. Maybe it's not just about flexibility, but about well-being. Okay, but here's a twist.
Okay.
Hybrid workers, those juggling home and office, are reporting higher anxiety about going to work
Oh.
and more disappointment with their job performance.
Oh, that's interesting. It complicates things.
So hybrid isn't a utopia.
Yep.
It's about finding what works for you.
Right.
Let's talk about return to office mandates.
Oh, yeah. Those.
Well, as of late 2024, employees who work from home at least one day a week are even less willing to comply with full RTO mandates than they were in 2022.
Wow. They're pushing back.
They are, and employers can't ignore it.
That's right.
It seems flexibility is non-negotiable.
It seems like it.
So that's the overview.
Wow.
WFH is becoming the norm. New work models are emerging.
Yeah.
And there's a link between how we work and how burned out we feel.
For sure.
But this is just the beginning.
There's so much more to talk about.
We've got a lot more to unpack, so stay with us.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
It really feels like we're in this big experiment figuring out the future of work. But let's go deeper into the SWAA data.
Yeah. Let's get specific.
It shows how people are actually reacting to these changes.
It gives you a real sense of what's happening.
So what are people saying about return to office mandates?
Okay, so in January 2025, employees were asked how they would react to a full RTO mandate.
Okay.
And among those who work from home at least one day a week,
Okay.
38%
Wow.
said they would quit and find a new job that lets them work from home at least part-time.
38%. That's a lot of people.
It shows how much people value flexibility.
Employers can't ignore that.
And another 31% said they would try to negotiate with their employer for at least some WFH days.
So that's almost 70% who don't want to go back full-time.
Right, it's a strong resistance to full RTO.
Yeah.
And the remaining 31% were split between those who would comply and those who were unsure.
I bet even those who comply aren't exactly thrilled.
Probably not, more like resigned.
Like, oh, fine, I'll come back, but I'm not happy.
Exactly. And this data is even more interesting when you compare it to fall 2022.
How so?
Back then, only 25% said they would quit if faced with a full RTO mandate.
So a 13-point jump in just 2 years.
That's a big shift in employee expectations.
Why do you think that is?
Well, people have experienced the benefits of WFH,
Yeah,
like flexibility, no commute, better work-life balance.
they're not going to give that up easily.
Right, and the data also shows some interesting generational differences.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Among younger workers, 29-year-olds,
Okay.
47% said they would quit in response to a full RTO mandate.
Almost half.
Yeah, it shows what's important to them.
And 39-year-olds aren't far behind at 38%.
Right, so it's not just Gen Z, it's across generations.
What does this mean for employers? Are they getting it?
They need to offer flexibility if they want to keep their employees, especially younger ones.
Yeah, the old ways just aren't going to cut it anymore. They got to adapt.
Yeah.
The SWAA report also shows how different industries are handling WFH.
Yeah, it's playing out differently in different sectors.
Okay, so, for example, in the information industry, which includes things like software and telecom, 40% of workers are fully remote.
40%. Wow.
Which makes sense. It's a tech-heavy field.
Makes sense.
But what about other industries? Are we seeing remote work in more traditional fields?
Yeah, actually, in finance and insurance, 24% are fully remote.
Higher than I would thought.
And in professional and business services, which is a really broad category.
Like lawyers, accountants, consultants,
All of that, yeah. 23% are fully remote.
So remote work is happening even in industries that have always been office-based.
It is a big change.
And hybrid work is even more common.
Yeah, in information, it's 35%.
So even in tech, a lot of people are doing hybrid.
Right, and in finance and insurance, it's 33%. And 34% in professional and business services.
So hybrid is really taking hold across the board.
It really is. But what about industries where remote work isn't as common? What's going on there?
Are they being left behind?
Well, at the other end of the spectrum, you have retail, trade, and education services.
Okay.
Only 4% of workers in those sectors are fully remote.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Hard to be a cashier or a teacher remotely.
Right. But what about hybrid? Any movement there?
Not much. 14% in retail trade and only 12% in education services are hybrid.
It seems like some jobs just can't be done remotely.
Yeah, that's right. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Different industries, different jobs, different needs.
Exactly.
Okay, so back to burnout. What are the specific symptoms people are experiencing?
So we talked about fully remote workers having fewer burnout symptoms overall.
Right.
But let's look at specific symptoms.
Okay.
One classic burnout symptom is low energy or exhaustion, and only 26% of fully remote workers reported experiencing that.
That's pretty low.
Yeah, much lower than fully on-site workers, where 41% reported low energy or exhaustion.
That's a big difference.
It is, and hybrid workers fall somewhere in between at 34%.
So the more time spent working from home, the less likely they are to feel exhausted.
It seems that way. And this holds true for other burnout symptoms, too.
Like?
Only 18% of fully remote workers reported having negative feelings about their job.
Wow, that's less than half the rate of fully on-site workers.
So maybe remote work isn't so bad after all.
So is remote work the answer to burnout?
Well, not necessarily. Remember, hybrid workers report more anxiety about going to work.
That's right. Hybrid work has its own challenges.
Yeah, it's not perfect for everyone.
How much anxiety are we talking about?
38% of hybrid workers reported feeling anxiety about going to work.
That's higher than both fully remote and fully on-site workers.
There's something about hybrid that's causing anxiety.
Yeah. Employers need to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. If hybrid work is going to work long-term, companies need to find ways to make it less stressful.
Yeah, it's not just about offering flexibility. It's about making sure people feel good.
Right.
Yeah, it really feels like we're all figuring this out together.
Yeah, it's a whole new world.
We've got these new work models,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not just about saying, hey, be flexible. It's about actually supporting people.
Making sure they can actually do their best work.
Yeah, no matter where they are.
Exactly.
But before we jump into solutions,
Okay.
there's one more interesting thing from the SWAA data about hybrid work.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It's about how people feel about their job performance.
Okay. Interesting.
So get this. People who work from home 3-4 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
they report the highest levels of disappointment with their job performance.
Huh. You'd think more WFH would make them feel better.
Right. I would have thought so too.
Maybe they're struggling to find that balance.
Like they're not fully present at home or at the office.
Could be they're always splitting their time.
And maybe that's also why they're worried about their careers.
Yeah, if you don't feel good about your work,
It's natural to worry about your future.
and managers need to recognize that.
So what about people who work from home 1-2 days a week?
They actually report slightly less disappointment.
Interesting. So maybe there's a sweet spot.
Maybe. Not too much WFH, not too little.
Just the right balance.
It's all about finding what works for you.
And that's going to be different for everyone.
Right. Different people, different needs.
So companies need to create a culture where people can figure out their ideal setup.
And feel supported in doing that.
Absolutely. So to wrap up,
Mm-hmm.
we've covered a ton of ground today
We have.
about WFH, burnout, the future of work.
It's a lot to take in.
And I think the main thing is
Yeah.
we're all still figuring this out.
It's a process.
There's no magic answer.
Right. No one size fits all.
It's about adapting, listening to employees.
And creating a work environment that works for everyone.
Exactly. And this isn't the end of the conversation.
That's just the beginning.
Things are going to keep changing.
Oh, yeah.
So we got to stay informed and be ready to adapt.
Always learning.
So as we close out this deep dive,
Okay.
I want to leave you with something to think about.
I like it.
We've seen how different work models can impact well-being.
For sure.
So here's the question. How can we create a future of work that's flexible, but also fulfilling and good for our mental health?
It's a big question.
It is, but it's an important one.
We need to keep asking it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We hope you learned something.
And that it got you thinking.
Until next time,
Keep learning
keep exploring
and keep pushing for a better world of work.
for yourself and for everyone else.